you can have the best technology in the world, but you have to have the right team round about it to make it successful. It's a lot more than just the product. I think sales training is fantastic and everybody should do it. It makes you very resilient. What other sector has that amount of support, really, to help you as an academic bin out your research result?
Welcome to the Academic Adventures podcast. This podcast is all about people who have embraced the opportunity to combine their academic work with entrepreneurial ventures. You'll hear about the highs and lows, balancing responsibilities and grabbing opportunities, plus advice for anyone thinking about following a similar path. Hello, I'm your host Sarah McLusky, and my academic adventurer for this episode is Anne Muir. Anne is Director of Portfolio at EOS, an organisation that invests in promising university spin-out companies. Anne has spent her career working in or supporting science and technology businesses. Despite studying biochemistry, life in the lab wasn't a great fit, so she moved into sales and business development in the pharmaceutical industry. Then, moving into technology transfer, she had roles at the University of Strathclyde, freelance consulting, and ultimately the University of Dundee, where she learned all about the spin-out process and how best to support academic entrepreneurs. Now, on the other side of the table, she is on the lookout for business ideas with the formula for success, a balance of the right technology with the right people at the right time. Although personal success means doing her bit to nurture entrepreneurial talent in Scotland. Welcome along to the podcast, Anne. It's so lovely to have you here. Could you tell us a bit about how you fit into this world of academic entrepreneurship?
Yep, sure. Thanks, Ian. Thanks for having me on. So I guess I'll start with my current role. So I'm Anne Muir. I'm Director of Portfolio Management at EOS. So EOS is a St Andrews-based seed stage impact investor. So we invest really early on in companies, so at the seed stage, and we invest in companies that, as well as having the potential to make a financial return, are going to have positive impact on the world. So for us, that's really key. So we invest primarily in spin-outs from Scottish universities in 4 different areas. So disease diagnosis and prevention, so life sciences kind of in a broad sense, and food and water security, energy security and climate change, and making industrial processes greener. So I'm in the early stage commercialization ecosystem, in that, we may be the first bit of money that goes into companies that spin out universities. We also follow on in terms of investment, so we can be involved in a company for, a long time through to exit. And we're a very hands-on investor, so we expect companies, when they come out of university, to be incomplete. They're not a finished article, they might have an incomplete management team. We'll come in, really help and support the company, help build things out. So that's my current role, but I've been around this sector for really quite a long time. So it's probably useful if I kind of go back and give you a bit of a
sure. Give us a quick roundup.
Yeah. So originally I was a biochemist, so studied biochemistry at University of Strathclyde, did a couple of years research. Edinburgh University in the lab really, really wasn't for me at all. So I then went into much more commercial role. So I did pharma, sales and some business development for about 5 years. And that was, amazing training. I think sales training is fantastic and everybody should do it. Makes you very resilient. And basically we're always selling. All my other roles that I've done, it may have been dressed up, but it's always sales and continues to be, really. So that was kind of my grounding, and obviously introduced me to the world of pharma. But then I guess what I missed was that really early stage science, being at the cutting edge. So I then went, sort of way back in the cycle and entered tech transfer. So I worked at the University of Strathclyde for quite a long period. Obviously, Strathclyde has got a major name in technology transfer, really entrepreneurial university and a brilliant place to train in doing, licensing, commercialization, spin outs, big industrial partnerships, etc. So did that for quite a long time. I was mainly focused on life sciences there. And then, like you, I worked freelance for quite a bit of time. And when you're freelance, you tend to get involved in lots of different things. So, but it was mainly around that sort of early stage sector. So worked for universities, worked for a bit of NHS commercialisation, worked for quite a few startups, mainly again in sort of, pharma related drug discovery, drug development. Worked on and off the University of Dundee doing various roles, and then from there went into full-time role at University of Dundee as head of IP and commercialization. So again, it was spin-outs, licensing. Dundee's really well known for having amazing spin-outs, but also for doing really long-term big industrial partnerships, particularly with large pharma partners. And then last post before I moved to EOS was Deputy Director of the Tech Transfer Office. So looked after IP and commercialization contracts, so both research and commercial contracts and public engagement. So quite a broad role. In between, at some point in that journey, I did have my own startup, which was nothing to do with science at all. Didn't quite turn out how I expected it to. We did raise a bit of investment. But, from that, learnt lots, and that's actually useful in my current role to have had that sort of, hands-on experience of what it's like being in, operationally within a startup. So, yeah, quite a, long time in the sector, and jumped to the other side of the table at last August when I joined EOS. So, yeah. My role there, Director of Portfolio Management, but again, it's very broad. So that covers everything from helping with deal origination due to my relationships with the universities, and a lot of technical due diligence on opportunities, and then following that through. So helping companies with their 100-day plans, post-investment, any actions that come out of the due diligence, and then helping to, monitor and manage and, basically support companies post-investment, make sure they've got everything they need to help them be successful and grow.
Yeah, thank you so much for that overview. I feel like I've got to ask just a little question about that startup that went over there. Just as anything. So you said it was something completely unrelated to what you were doing.
Yeah, it was totally different. It was actually clothing. So it was a women's waterproof. It's still around, still goes. So it's called Protected Species. Beautiful product. I mean, I guess what I learned from that is it takes a lot more than a beautiful product to make a successful company. And, I see that, sort of time and time again in university career and current career. So, it's not just about one thing. It's a whole, it's that whole, it takes a village type thing. You need a lot more. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I do see that a lot with companies that we're assessing for investment just now. You can have the best technology in the world, but you have to have the right team round about it to make it successful. It's a lot more than just the product.
Yeah. So as you say, you've seen so many companies come and go over your career. So I think you must have some really interesting insights there that I'd love to dig into a little bit. So maybe the first thing there that you said, the importance of having the right team. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I was just saying there. That is the key thing for, I was going to say for us as investors, but it was a key thing really when I was on the other side of the table at the university as well. I mean, it's just so important to have that right person to be able to drive things forward, or people. And if you don't, you have to be able to you have to find the right people to help drive the technology forward. And I think, as universities, we just kind of naturally get really, really focused on the technology because that seems to be what it's all about, but it's not. You have to have the team roundabout. So I think, there are a lot of support mechanisms around, like, high growth spin out program or, various other things that help build that team. So, it's not just the academic involved. You have to be able to bring in someone commercial to drive it forward. You just have to have the right mixture of expertise round about your technology to be able to drive it forward. But certainly, from an investment angle, the team is massive. I mean, that's the thing that you're assessing, straight away. Yes, the product and the technology is really, really important. Of course it is, but you can't do it without the right team round about it.
And what are the things that you look for in a really good team? Is it that mix of skills, or is it the personalities and how they work together as a team?
I think it's both of those. So I think definitely the skills. You need to have people with experience in there, and that doesn't mean that you can't have someone in C-suite position who's not done it before. You absolutely can, but you need to have the right support round about them. There needs to be someone there who's been there, done that, just to bring that experience and help guide them forward. But we do support a lot of first-time CEOs or some and founders, but it's just getting that right mixture of expertise round about them to really support. So I think there has to be the right expertise, but so much of it's down to personality as well. so much. I mean, it is a little bit more some of it is more of an art than a science, because you just do kind of know who comes across as credible and who you think you can work with, really quickly. So a lot of it is personality, because it's about drive and everything as well, and being able to lead people. So it's a real mix, I would say.
One of the other podcast guests said you need to make sure that you get on with your partners in the company, because it's almost like you marry them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think as well as finding the right team, I think you've said there that there is, it needs to be the right product, it needs to be the right technology or things like that as well. What sorts, maybe you could give us some examples of things that you've seen that work or that don't work in terms of these spin out companies?
Yeah. I mean, certainly, both Strathclyde and Dundee have had massive successes in terms of spin out. So there's quite a lot of successes there. But I guess in terms of sort of recipe, it has been that real sort of mixture of very entrepreneurial, academic, with the right technology at the right time, So I don't think that means that it's about luck. It is more about drive and technology and innovation and who's at the cutting edge. But I've seen things that don't work, that just don't have that mixture. So where you have a fantastic technology, but there's just not the right team round about it. So, for example, being in a startup's very, very different from being in a large corporate. And I think, sometimes as universities, we put people in startups who have a very, very long experience of being in large corporates, and that just doesn't quite work. I think there's a place for it, but probably not it depends. I don't want to say never. I mean, because maybe I'll do it tomorrow.
So what are the sort of differences?
It's more time and I guess what position they have in the company. But yeah, I think you have to have someone in there with startup experience, because it is just very different. There's
in what
not
ways
the same.
Is it different?
I think in large corporates, you often don't have as varied a role. You have a lot more support round about you. There'll be people who do things for you. You don't have that in a startup. You have to do everything, and you have to have the drive and be able to juggle, be able to move very, very fast. And, that's not obviously a criticism of people who worked in large corporates, and I could be accused of that, having worked in a large university. But it's, it's so different. It's just the time scale, the variety, what you need to do. It's just so different.
Yeah. Oh, well, I wonder if we could think a little bit then about the kinds of support and practical things you've seen that can help. So you've mentioned that obviously there's a couple of things you mentioned already. Obviously, you work for a company that's about finance, and you mentioned sales training. Could you maybe give us some examples of the things that are out there that you've seen that really make a difference? Yeah,
I mean, I think, for IP commercialization, there's a lot of support out there. I mean, I think it gets a bad rep within universities, but if you think about it, there's a whole unit set up there, or department set up there to help you as an academic commercialise. I mean, that's massive. So I would say, the tech transfer office as first port of call is huge. So they will give training on IP, give training on business development, various other things, and provide, masses of support. And then there's loads of other things within the ecosystem as well. So like Converge, most universities will have at Dundee, we had a Centre for Entrepreneurship, which provided masses of amazing training, around pitching. They would bring people in to help with finance, sales, business development, kind of everything you need for a startup and spin out. At Dundee as well, we also had a spin out academy. So, but all other universities will have similar centres, and there's huge amounts of support there. So within the university and out with as well. And then there's obviously, your economic development agency, Scottish Enterprise, with a huge amount of support. So I think really, it gets, people tend to sort of diss these things, but what other sector has that amount of support, really, just to help you as an academic spin out your research results? It's, it's pretty incredible, really.
That is quite an incredible range of different organisations involved in contributing to things. Yeah. And you particularly mentioned that you think sales training is really important. Why do you think sales training is so important?
Because I think, you are always selling. If you think about when you're spinning something out, so, I mean, the first thing you have to do is convince someone of your data. That is sales. So you're convincing other people about it. Then particularly you're convincing investors. When you're pitching, you are selling yourself. And then, as you go on, if you're in the spin out and you're continuing to fundraise, you're always selling. And then, it's just having that sort of commercial view on life as well. When you do sales, then you're always thinking about, your return and, getting out to the customer. What's you have to get into that customer mindset. I think that's it as well. We can be quite removed from who's going to buy it when you're in a university, whereas you need to have that kind of customer at the front of your mind from the outset, I think. So it's just having that much more commercial view on your science. Who's going to buy it? Why should they buy it? What's different? Which is all sales. And I know we dress things up and we call it other things, but it's just sales.
That's just what I was thinking. I was thinking a lot of what you're talking there, people, you might talk about it as like, training in speaking or persuasion or, whatever. But as you say, at the end of the day, it's all selling something, whether that's yourself or a product or an idea. Yeah. Well, I wonder if in the experience you've had, perhaps without naming names, there's any situations you've seen where somebody or an organisation, a company has really impressed you in the way that they've dealt with a challenge and maybe turned things around?
I can think of one spin-out company where, they spun out expecting to, so they had a, very cool technology. I won't go into what it was. And they thought they were going to sell products. But when they went out to the market, people actually found it too complex, and they wanted the researchers to actually carry out, to use the product for them and carry it out as a service. So they had to flip from being, they had everything lined up, or not lined up, but they expected to grow a product company and to be selling product, to have stock, etc., but actually ended up being a very specialised service company, because people wanted them to carry out the testing. So, but that worked.
Yes.
So I get, it's just all about being flexible, responding to the customer, responding to customer needs and to the market.
Yeah. So you've said that the job that you're doing at the moment has lots of different elements to it. The other jobs you've had, there's been juggling lots of things going on at the same time. How do you balance these different parts of your role and your life?
It's a good question. I mean, all the roles I've had have always been really broad. I've never really had a sort of narrow role, apart from maybe my my first sales roles were pretty specific. But all other roles since I entered this sort of early stage ecosystem have been incredibly broad. And it is, it can be quite tricky. So at the moment, EOS is quite small company, so it's kind of like a startup itself in that we don't do everything because we all have sort of areas we specialize in, but the role is broad and goes from helping bring in new opportunities, speaking to universities, etc., or other places where you may find startups, goes from that to doing very technical due diligence, which requires it's that kind of deep work, whereas lots of other things, like speaking to people about new opportunities or managing companies afterwards is a very different way of thinking. So it's quite hard to sort of juggle that, and block out chunks of time for that kind of, really focused bit where you're trying to get your head around bits of science. So that can be a bit of a challenge. I think it is just trying to block things out, but because it's that sort of startup environment, you just have to be able to respond to opportunities. I think overall it's just being flexible, and you do have to go where the need is. So if we have a company that needs support, then we support them, and you have to be able to respond very quickly in the kind of environment that we work in. So I think it's been flexible mainly.
Yeah. And do you enjoy that, having lots of different things going on?
Yeah, it suits me.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, with that, talking about enjoyment and thinking about all these companies and things you've worked with, whether that sense of what it would mean to be a successful spin-out company, what perhaps it meant to you in the past, what it means to you now, if that's something that's changed over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it has changed over. I mean, I guess, previously and now, I mean, obviously a huge part of it is seeing a company going on to a successful exit. They're bought out and everyone gets a return. That's what you want as success, really. Mm-hmm. So sort of in the past and now, that's the kind of main marker of success. But I think along the way, what I've realised is another, huge thing about success is that development of talent. And I think that's so important. If you see someone who it's their first time doing a spin out and it's been successful, and then they've gone on and used that experience and started something else. And I think it's that recycling of talent, entrepreneurial talent in Scotland that I think is really exciting and really important. So, and what something I really enjoy in a current role is working with, people who've really early on in this kind of entrepreneurial journey, sort of first time founders, etc., and giving them a lot of support. That's, it's incredibly rewarding, because then they're going to go on and do a lot more. And it's that sort of recycling of talent and developing a lot more talent in Scotland, I think. Get a lot of, it's really rewarding.
Yeah. And are there a lot of people who come back again and again with new businesses, new ideas?
Probably not as many as we would like. I mean, I think that's something that we don't, that in Scotland it can be quite hard to get sort of experienced management teams in place sometimes, because we maybe don't have that as much recycling of talent as you do maybe, down sort of Golden Triangle. But I mean, there's still, masses of hugely talented people that keep doing it. So, I mean, there is a significant amount, but it would obviously be good for Scotland economy if we had more.
Yeah. So, well, perhaps on that note, what advice would you give to anybody who is thinking about either taking a step into these entrepreneurial waters, maybe for the first time, maybe for the second or third time?
Yeah. I think if you're in a university, go and find your tech transfer office, go and find your IP commercialization people. They are there to help you. They really want to help you. And, there's hugely talented people in those offices with masses of experience. So I would say go and speak to them. And I think it's just all about trying things, and having the energy to have a go at it. But I would say just go and find the support, because it is out there. absolutely, there's huge amount of support that's available.
Yeah, and is there any advice in terms of, I don't know, people preparing themselves emotionally for what might be ahead?
I think if you're an academic, academics, it's not an easy job, is it? I mean, it's incredibly difficult. They're well equipped, They get turned down for grants, they get turned down for publications. They're already pretty, very resilient. They already have to explain their science, sell things. I think it's just using that experience in a different way, but they're, hugely well equipped.
I think it's really helpful to reframe that experience in that way. So the fact that it's like, you might not think of presenting your research or writing a funding application as selling, but it kind of is. And as you say, that resilience of applying for things and not getting them, and often again and again and again. Really helpful to reframe it that way.
Yeah.
Well, it just remains to say thank you so much for taking
welcome.
the time to come and have a chat and sharing your knowledge and experience. Thank you.
It was good fun.
If you've been inspired by this podcast, head over to our LinkedIn page and tell us about your biggest takeaways. You'll find a link in the show notes, or just search for Academic Adventures Podcast. This podcast is a collaboration between the University of the West of Scotland, Converge and Sarah McLusky. The podcast team includes Orla Kelly, Adam Kosterka, Jen Black and me, Sarah McLusky. The Academic Adventures podcast is proudly supported by the Scottish Ecosystem Fund 2023 to 2024.